Hi, my name is David Labby, and this is for Fitchburg State University's Managing Business Analytics class. I'm an MBA grad student concentrated in business analytics, and this is about AI in the telecom media industries, so specifically technology, media, and telecom. And so far this is about like artificial intelligence being involved. We all know that AI is transforming almost every single industry, but specifically when it comes to the telecom media and technology, things are advancing rapidly, and digital information and copyright infringements are becoming more rampant. What concludes fair use in any type of information graphic, media presentation, information about that. If you use somebody else's information to create a completely new and separate piece of material or content, is that an infraction? Right. So these are these are questions that are being raised in this. Right. And we're going to be reviewing some of the impact that this has had and some of the things that are changing, because things are still in process. Right. We still have lawsuits that are in progress, and we have other materials that need to be addressed as well, in consideration of like ethics and fair compensation and fair attribution. Right. So how do how do you accredit something to somebody? So AI search and copyright challenges, Perplexity, Anthropic, ChatGPT, these are all being widely used. Publishers are claiming that AI reduces website traffic and revenue. So this is also based on, journalists and publications and publishers, right? So AI is now using a lot in concerns of what their search traffic is doing. So they're taking all this information and paraphrasing it native on their platform, the AI search platform, because as we provide queries to them, they give us answers and they're compilating all the information. But what does that mean? It means that you're no longer going to that website. So publishers are saying, like, you're taking away our traffic, and that there's a fair claim to that in some ways. I mean, even though, Googling is technically very similar. You're putting in a search query. AI is, in the background, logistically taking considerations of like what, information to provide you. But you usually have that where you have the information accessible directly to you, where to go, right? So you can go to that platform and find the information and get the direct information from that site. Here in like Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude, right? Those queries are just stagnant, right? You just stay in one place and you're getting that information right there. What do we do about that? Taylor Herzlich, she was talking about, some of these legal challenges, and Perplexity has like this huge lawsuit against them because they're saying that publishers and journalists are saying that they're losing revenue, and also that it is unauthorized or without consent use of some of their information that is behind not firewalls. I forget the exact term, but there's these mid walls like paywalls, but that AI can circumvent because they have access to pretty much the impact code right on the back end, so they can just go directly to the information. So, and that's one of the next things in this, where the Japanese lawsuit. For the Japanese lawsuit specifically, right, the article that we were talking about, they are, it's a huge copyright infringement because they said that they're getting access to, information, and they're storing this information for their AI. So what, whereas in like these queries are providing information, but also, is there anything that needs to be done about how these AI agents and generators are storing information, right, that is copyrighted? It's technically kind of this very similar to a library, but at the same time, it's providing traffic and taking away traffic and taking away monetary compensation from these sites, and it's also kind of corrupting. AI can have hallucinations. It can also provide misinformation. Sometimes it mixes things up. It's very rare, but it still happens. So it's reducing journalistic credibility. What do we do about that? How can it's being improved upon, but these are things that need to be directly addressed. And they're starting to be. These are new aspects that AI is bringing into this industry that we weren't that we didn't have the foresight to think about. These are foreshadowing events of how do we have these copyright infringements taken care of, and what do we do about that? and specifically like Anthropic, they had a fair use and point, but how do we, when we're talking about pirated content, right? I mean, there's a $1.5 billion AI copyright settlement going on right now, right? About all of this information. Now that actually didn't pan out for $1.5 billion as of yet, as far as I understand. But that's what they're looking at, right? If everything were to be claimed as each copyrighted work, they could be fined up to $3,000. But like primarily, they're just using it as a library database, so that way they can paraphrase and utilize that information for people, right? But then how do you compensate, and also how do you accredit that information properly when they're utilizing multiple stores of information, multiple, multifaceted information from multiple sources into one answer, right? So should there be some sort of link? I mean, usually with like AI, ChatGPT, they cite all their sources when they're providing you a lot of, especially in the deep thinking. So these are things to really consider. Coming back to Perplexity is actually providing a revenue sharing program for publishers to help compensate them for their copyright and for their information. So this kind of penetrates the legal concept of this penetrates the legal aspect of accountability and responsibility when they're providing a solution, saying like we can kind of see your point, we want to provide you with fair compensation. This could go one of two ways. One, it either makes them fully accountable, or one of three ways, right? So they could also take some partial responsibility and go with this, or Comet Plus might be asking for more. They're looking for maybe 80% of the Comet Plus subscriptions. That's another thing, is that there's a lot of subscriptions based services, like with Forbes, right? And entrepreneur.com, Time Magazine, Time, it's the publisher Time, and all these other publisher platforms that have subscription-based revenue services. These AIs are kind of not just skimming that off the top anymore. They are redirecting that traffic. Now the thing is that where does monopoly come into play? Like, these publishers, they can't monopolize this, but when that was a primary stream of their revenue, is it kind of one of those things where boo-hoo, like, you need to change your revenue model? How do when they had something as a primary revenue source, but these are players that have been around for a long time, so they have the legal clout in order to be able to contend, they can contend this. So I think that's something to really think into consideration. Now, real quick, in consideration of the steep analysis: social, technical, economic, environmental, and political, right? So like we have easier access to information, but we still need to think about like policy provisions, information about keeping information about our data collection and storing our personal information, making sure there's aspects of consent. Same thing as like the technological aspect of LLM models, learning language models and advanced AI search. This is really impacting us by creating a new era of information. Like, this isn't just like where everything changed when we went from having no literature to written literature and being able to share that, and then we had letters and newspapers, and then eventually we had the telephone, and then we had TV, and then we had cell phones and the internet. We had the internet and then cell phones, and now here it is. We have the internet on our phone, and we have Google, and now we're in a completely new precedence over all this. It's just fantastic. Economic, we have new revenue opportunities for publishers as well as ourselves, right? I mean, that's a huge thing. So publishers do have AI as well, so they could be changing their own models. Environmental, high energy use for AI infrastructure, right? Political, increased government oversight and regulation. So we need to be able to, in tandem, be able to keep up with these issues that are coming up, at a corporate and also as on a governmental level. These are new territories. This is expanding way faster than before, and usually it takes time for us to have legal processes to change things. We now need to keep up, because this is like a huge. We're jumping ahead. Where usually things would take a couple of decades, this is taking just a few years. It's insane. So just also considering the regulations, ethics, and global implications, copyright and intellectual property remaining major concerns. Businesses need to ensure that there are transparency and accountability. So these copyright issues need to be addressed, right? Ethics. We need to be able to think about humanitarian aspects, but also the consideration of, monetary compensation and how this affects businesses and people as a whole. It's a huge shift in where money is being redirected, right? And same thing like with regulations. With new power comes new responsibility. And with this is a huge shift. It's a huge wave, coming in that we need to be able to keep up with. And governments are having a hard time keeping up, especially even at the local or regional or state or global level. We need to be able to handle these. So it's a global concern. And lastly, overall, I mean, like just consideration of like copyright. Just think about what happened with Carrie Fisher in Star Wars, right? Her likeness and her image were used without explicit consent, right? She had said that her image and her voice could be used in the movies, right? But there was nothing specific concerning about after her passing, right? And then they used AI to use that, without her explicit consent. That was a huge, huge thing that happened in the news, right? So, especially when it comes to, deep fake technology, using people's likenesses and faces. And, like this is a concern for not just copyright of literature, but copyright of all content and material creation, right? Video, media, telecoms, right? Uh, it's a new era for everything. So, business leaders and the governments need to keep this balance and the innovation and the responsibility that we have. So these are our references, for our articles and also the resources that we used, for our class. Thank you for your time.